You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Warlord Scarr.
I'm Owen.
I'm just out of the shower, the drugs are kicking in, I've had coffee, it's all cool. I'm SavageMick.
And we're here today to talk about an interesting dichotomy. A episode headed by Scarr is about dichotomies. Who would have thought? There might be a bit of a woolly tale to this one, folks, because this is I've stumbled across an article recently, taking some shots at famous D&D personality who doesn't want to be D&D personality, Matt Colville, who has released 2 different books on the subject of your D&D character, 5th Ed character, gaining power and influence and such forth. And this article was rather annoyed to come to the realization that the 2 books had very different philosophies on how to achieve this. And this sort of, I picked up on this because this is sort of something I've been thinking of myself as I've looked through my PDF copies, because, I am obviously a Matt Colville shill of the highest order. But yeah, that these books, separated by a couple of years of owning a company and having to make content for D&D, have suddenly developed very different design philosophies. And it brought up this dichotomy and how we think about the parties that we have in our games and how they are arranged and how they proceed with what they want to do. The basic outline is that one way is to assume that the party is this cohesive unit with a unified purpose and goal who are doing the party thing and going as a party, doing things as a party, being slapped around as a party, sharing all of their ups and downs. And the other one is that the party is a alliance of associates that all have their own ideas of what they want to do, but need the other party members together to get that done, at least for now. And can a game do both? Can a party do both? And can a famous game designer with millions of dollars on Kickstarter do both? The answer may shock you. So, do people have thoughts on this topic, or do you just want to rag on Matt Colville for half an hour?
Oh, look, the shields are up already.
The first thought is I know Matt Colville mainly from him recounting the tale of the first story arc, the clan war of Legend of the Five Rings, culminating in the Day of Thunder. And it was much shared enough of war circles when he talked about it, because I also agree, I think it's one of the greatest stories they ever told in gaming. It's up there with the clan invasion from BattleTech and other ones which are kind of an emergent player-involved narrative that happened, that was directed by the company, but still managed to draw people in and let people do things and make choices. And I think it's that interactive element of gaming that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle, and it's kind of this untapped resource in gaming. So I was really happy when he talked about it. And he seems a very compelling guy, good speaker, great storyteller from that point of view. But one of the things for me about RPGs is that there are a bunch of different skill sets in producing RPG content. There is your kind of storyteller or writer who tells you stories about the setting and gives you ideas for how to tell stories for the setting. There's the adventure designer who can kind of put together a compelling narrative from an adventure point of view, which is a different skill set to the storyteller. There's the games designer who comes up with rules, and there's the games developer who tells the game designer you can have those rules, you can't have those rules because they fit in with the overall philosophy, flavor, or balance of the game. And if you've got one person wearing all 4 of those hats, there's immediate conflicts, because the developer and the designer shouldn't be the same person. because the designer comes up with ideas and thinks they're good ideas, and the developer is the independent assessor that looks at the bigger picture and says, you can't have this. It breaks too many things. You can't give wizards a spell that unlocks all locks automatically. That treads on the rogue's toes. You need someone there to do different jobs, to go, okay, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can do that, you can do that, you can have that. Right? And if someone's doing wearing all the hats, and they often are in RPGs because they're small margin businesses, yeah, it's a problem. Except, how much money did Matt Colville make on his Kickstarter?
I think it was like 2 million for the first one and 1.5 for the second, and he has basically used it to fund a company of 8 people and a variety of freelance artists and article writers.
Really good. Does he have a developer? Does he have a separate game designer?
He has since the first book. He has now hired James Introcaso, who's a sort of a 5e veteran, DM skill type of guy, to be his line developer.
Yeah. So you need someone like that who's filling that kind of games development role. If you don't have that, you're trying to do it all on your own. It's a bad idea because you're going to think your ideas are good, but they mightn't actually be good. Or they might be good in the context you put them in. That's my first thought on it, because that's my experience of RPG design development.
Yeah, well, it sort of gels with, Matt's sort of breakdown of why the two books are different, is that he went into the first book with his own assumptions of, well, back when I was playing first edition in the 80s, this is how we played. We all were a group of random people who needed each other to watch our backs in a dungeon, and then after every big plot arc, we would split off into little groups, have our own little downtimes, and we would run our own strongholds. And this, for Matt, was, he assumed, the juice of having a castle is that you had your own personal little fiefdom and all your cool friends and pet dragons and such. But after he released the book the first book that went in with this, he kept getting the message, well, how does my party? We are a close-knit party of people. We want a clubhouse to hang out in together. Why is this assuming that we all have our own separate castles, half a mile apart? Like, we want to have one castle where we do all our stuff together. And this prompted him to rethink the second book, which is very much about being a united organization, a group of people working together. And he basically had to redo the entire design philosophy, to the point where a lot of fans of the first book got really shirty when they saw the second book. And it's just like, I wanted the book was more about us all having our own castles and our kingdoms. Like, why the sudden change to assuming everyone was like to hang out with each other all the time?
Is this a boomer millennial divide? Where the boomer players can afford their own houses and are like, why would I want to share a house? And when the millennials are stuck with co-living and want to rationalise it as a good choice.
Our games reflect our experience.
I'm just saying, is that a factor? Like, I have to live with all my friends because I don't have I can't afford my own place. So we all have to we have to live we have to have 6 bunk beds together in one large room with a single cohabitation common space. And 2 toilets.
I'm not homeless, I'm stronghold surfing. So I thought you were going to bring up something else. The article does start with this kind of question about, is this old school versus new school, which I dismiss out of hand because it's always a red herring. The idea that back in the day people played this way and back in the day people played that way is, excuse me, but complete bollocks. Like Pendragon gives us enough to hang that argument with. Pendragon is exactly what Colville was pegging for with that first book. A bunch of high-powered individuals who come together occasionally, very occasionally, to solve a problem, to associate and adventure, rather than they all hang out in each other's pockets day on day. I'm looking at the 2 books. Font choice, fantastic. Chef's kiss. Love the covers as well. The cover art's amazing. And this is where kind of the Colville-ness, I think, comes in. This problem appears to have been attacked from the wrong direction. Matt Colville, as I understand him to be, a sort of narrative first guy, an ideas first guy, has proposed kind of narrative situations and then systemized them backwards. Instead, which gets tricky real quick, because it's so easy to find exceptions to the rule rather than have a rule to cover the exceptions. What's the backlash in this? I mean, or is he allowed to say, well, look, I changed my mind and decided to do it this way based on what people were telling me? Or is it fair to say, well, this set of rules works for this situation, this set of rules works for this situation? What's the problem?
Well, part of it was that the original plan from like 2015 or something. Man, imagine having a plan that lasted through 2 years of COVID. But the original plan and pitch was that these two books would be intercompatible, that they would form a greater whole. But
it's a problem.
Yeah, it just like he tried doing that. He got feedback saying that, well, I'm not sure. You see, this is again design philosophy. He wants people to use his book. He doesn't want people to just buy it, say, oh, that looks pretty, and put it on a shelf. He wants people to use his book. So he has to take on all this feedback that apparently, according to the people who are reaching out to him, they want the Clubhouse experience. They want their group to be this cohesive unit. So he decided, well, I'll have to design for that. And now he's getting a whole bunch of people saying, no, I don't want this to be a cohesive unit. I want this broadly applicable, done out thing where I draw in all little hexes on my kingdom map and I conquer each 6 mile chunk of kingdom myself on downtime. And well, first off, you can't please anybody, and maybe he was silly to try, but I do think the fact that there is this wide gap in what people's desires are is worthy of discussion. It's just like, is there merit to either of these, the extremes of either of these things? So we're like...
Yeah, absolutely. It's all worth exploring. I'm not sure it's all worth systematizing. I'd also say it sounds like he's lining it all up so the third book can be fellowships and clubhouses, and then everyone's happy. And why not? Like, if he's got a strong line, like the first book did 2.1 million on Kickstarter. I couldn't tell you what the second book did. I haven't looked at it yet.
I think it's 1.5 or so. He's already said the third book is not going to be anything to do with this. Third book's just going to be a new monster manual. It's going to have a bunch of cool art and cool monsters and some mechanics for having cool boss fights. That's it. Job's done.
It's probably missing a trick. I think the fellowships and clubhouses stuff could be covered well, because they all kind of... Yeah, that thing Owen said about millennials, boomers, it is kind of... It's landing there.
I think, just from a quick look at both of these books, I haven't read them, but they're actually serving two different goals from a mechanics system play loop sort of approach. Strongholds and Followers is there because players have nothing to spend money on. Let's let them spend their money on player housing. And everyone gets to decorate their own house because that's a personal activity. You want to put your money into, basically, I want to build a tower and I want to have a research thing and I want to have some advantages in play from sinking money into this and upgrades in time and oh cool, I can put in some NPCs I kind of like and I can chat to them and I get kind of a BioWare experience of having a sort of little mini party of my own people who will do what I want and interact the way I want with me. Right? Mm-hmm. Whereas Kingdoms of Warfare is we want a game with a bunch of epic warfare content so we can lead armies against other armies and fight the epic fantasy battle. We've done the Fellowship thing. Now we want to do the Return of the King thing where we lead our army against the hordes of the Dark God, or we defend a giant siege or something. Those are, they're serving two different goals. Now, they're quite different goals. One of them is basically go here, build your little own player housing section where you can express your creativity. And the second one is we want to take our game to a more zoomed out look. We want to feel like movers and shakers in this world, where armies, 1,000 men will die at my mildest command. You're serving two different little fantasies there, and that's perfectly acceptable content to put out there. But I wouldn't look at them as linked directly, because they're not.
That sounds like the route he's tripped over in this jaunt. Yeah. Not to mention, I know Matt Colville firstly as a writer on computer games, and like the description of what happens in terms of setting up your stronghold sounds an awful lot like after a session of play at the table, you go away and play a couple of rounds of Heroes of Might and Magic, build up your empire, build up your kingdom, which is fine in notion, but you need to have a separate game to really fully flesh that out. And who's going to play it? And when are you going to find time? This all runs into the realities of getting people around a table or onto a video chat and actually doing this stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the major things I wanted to bring up is that we have these sort of two extremes. The one of the party that basically no one has their own goal; they just do what the party's doing. And the other extreme is where you essentially have this alliance of circumstance that can break off and change and mutate at each time. This is, say, the Gygaxian model at the other extreme. Is like Gygax was infamous for basically having this weird rotating group of people of various different levels and play times, just coming rotating in and out of his dungeon. And it very, very much wasn't about a party. A party was a thing you did for this session, and then the next session would have a completely different party, and you might not see Merlin, the cowboy paladin, for another month. And for whatever reason, Gygax found that so logistically easy to organize as to be confused by the concept of having the same group every Thursday for the rest of the time. Like what we would consider the standard way of playing was bizarre to him. He just assumed that we're going to have this group of 15, 20 people that are going to cycle in and out as their schedules and their interest in the game waxes and wanes. But for whatever reason, the gaming is largely settled on we play once a week or once every 2 weeks on this fixed schedule, and that makes something like, well, I'm going to go off, we'll have a chat on Skype, and we'll figure out how I take my castle and add a paint job and tame 3 basilisks. That's become the difficult thing, whereas in this apparent past, it was considered the norm for people to just come over on a Wednesday to Gygax's house, annoy his wife, and have a whole bunch of personalized solo content. So you're sort of butting up against, the accepted, we just play once a week or whatever.
See, Gygax had this massive rotating cast of players, didn't he?
Yeah.
Like he could have, there were 15, 20 different people who might show up for a game. It was a bit more like a party in the sense of people showed up for this thing this evening and it's not preset. Whereas our experience is generally that of, okay, we get together a team of 4 or 5 people who show up pretty much on the regular. Yeah? So it's evolved in a different way to the way because where was Gygax living? Was he living somewhere like a campus town or something? Or
it was Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Yeah. And despite being a poorly paid insurance underwriter, he apparently had a massive front room that could seat 10 nerds at any one time.
Wood frame housing.
Often.
So, wood frame housing allows you to capture acres.
It's a disaster when anything happens, though.
Sure, but
puff of wind. Whew,
rebuilding was easy. Easy for the survivors. So there's an awful lot we could dig into about Gary Gygax and how he played and what he was playing and why, which we're doing now in a semi-regular series called The Tomes of Gygax. Please check him out. The first one's out already. But yeah, on the subject of, well, the way we play is always these five guys this night of the week, I've experienced firsthand the Gygaxian method. Sometimes contributor ZowSeed, way back in the day, used to run a regular game, but with an irregular cast, sometimes numbering up to 12 people at the table, in a place called the Swan Hotel, in a little town in the west of Ireland called Sligo. And anyone out there who's a member of the Flat Earth Society probably remember this very fondly. They used to run Confess in Sligo many a moon ago. Flat Earthers, I salute you. Good times. Anyway, ZowSeed did run this Gygaxian style game, where he wasn't always sure who the hell was going to show up. Quite honestly, sometimes the table ran as two separate parties who were sort of interweaving plots and mystiques and intrigues. And all I can say is ZowSeed is a man of great fortitude and ingenuity. It is wild to see it work, but it can work. I mean, we're talking about this like it's completely unheard of, or you wouldn't even contemplate it today, but it can work. The Swan Hotel thing was a room that was being occupied by gamers once a week on the weekend for like about 6 hours, and any game could get played there. And it afforded the space and the opportunity and the pool of players to do a drop-in, drop-out D&D game. I think it was second at D&D.
All these poor millennials in cohabiting have to shove their...
I don't know. I mean, how many more people could we stuff into this Discord? Like, visit our Discord. That is basically the same thing. Anybody could, if we set it up right, anybody could drop in and link a character sheet, and we could be playing within minutes. So it's not as if there's any real hurdles to this. We just we choose not to do it because we keep being sold the D&D as a family kind of thing, as a group, and it's always the same players and you're always following the same stories. I'm way off topic here, but just to address that...
You're probably more on topic than the rest of us, I don't know.
But just to address that, it is doable, it is possible, I've seen it happen. Ironically, it became a regular game with the same cast, but all of those player characters had been through the crucible of the round robin game, and emerged with a lot of different backstories and things going on. I mean, not the kind of group you'd put together if you sat down and go, we're all part of an adventuring party, now who are we going to be? Rather, they'd stumbled in like Moorcock's heroes going, I've had a rough decade. I'm going to settle down to more regular adventuring now. What can we say about this in terms of Kovo? Go on.
No, I do think, though, that your point is that it's the logistical issue of organising it, and if you have free time, you can in fact do this sort of West Marches style, get the players to pick the day type thing. But I do think the point of, as the campaign goes on, that there's sort of this natural pressure to get down to what the regulars do, and I suspect that pressure may be even more addictive than the logistics. Is that like Gygax has sections in the Tome of Gygax, which we'll get to, of talking about his better players, which we hope he means his more engaged players, and that they would essentially be the ones that have the real impact. That they would put the direction in the campaign, but the side effect of putting that direction in the campaign is that once it has a direction, this random assortment of guys arrangement sort of falls away to, well, the people who want to follow this plot that has been forged by not osmosis, Brownian motion. Yeah, the random plot that is developed, that will gain steam as the campaign goes on, and suddenly it will become far more efficient to just have, well, the people who want to do that game get together every Thursday on the regular, because that's when their schedules line up, and over time, this chaotic, libertine method of grabbing everyone into a game whenever it suits us turns into the classic campaign, and the classic thing just by convenience. And I'd almost say that the same probably happens the other direction too, as the united party with one goal will, as the campaign goes on, start picking up bits of individual goals for their characters to take play, and they'll start, well, maybe instead of charging off to get the silver sword and slay the werewolf king, can we have a few sessions, side session, to deal with my terrible father, or Mary's lost jewels, or something. The middle ground that we find ourselves in so much is just something that sort of develops, not because of lack of philosophy, but because of the pressures of time and convenience.
I have my own theories on why we've moved towards a model where everyone's friends in a team, and great friends, and the best friends. It's because almost no RPG system is robust and balanced enough to handle the PvP conflict that would ensue if people are not in fact friends and on a team. Because often, if you went, okay, you're now fighting, right? One of a couple of things happens. If the fighter decides to take on the wizard either hits the fighter with a save or suck and he's dead, effectively, or like unconscious or stumbling around blinded for 2 minutes, while the wizard plinks him to death with cantrips, or the fighter makes the saves and blitzes the wizard down in a turn or two. And that's really swingy. But then there's also fights where, oh yeah, you've no chance. What? You've no chance. He's got better AC, better attack bonus, better damage. Your advantage is that you do other stuff like healing. That'll only make the fight last longer for you. So yeah, you're just going to lose this fight. Oh, the tanky guy's probably going to kill the rest of you because he's got enough defenses to handle your offense, because he's spec to defend against like monsters hitting you, which hit much harder than you hit and much more accurately than you hit. So yeah, you're going to lose this fight. So the game isn't good enough to handle that. If you're in a team-based game with roles, you go, okay, I want the offensive lineman and the quarterback to get in a shoving match. What happens? The quarterback gets flattened. Oh, the quarterback's weaker than the offensive lineman. No, the quarterback's strengths are in different areas and a different team play. So the game can't handle it.
Could it ever?
Very few, almost none, because it needs to be built. The game needs to be built differently to handle that, right?
Yeah,
and in the end, you come down to a rock scissors paper most of the time. So it's basically like, okay, I beat you and he beats me.
Yeah.
So you can't handle that happening. So it can't happen, basically.
My contention was that not ever an anon rather than a recent development?
There's been PvP happens. And people get super salty about it, so much so that people tell everyone never do it.
I would recommend the opposite. Turn to the person on your left and attack them with your character right now. It's a great way to learn the system. It's a great way to find out what your weaknesses are. And it starts some inter-character stuff that can take sessions to play out. It's a great opener. Turn to the guy on your left and go at him. For the flimsiest of reasons, if possible.
But nothing bothers an insecure person knowing that somebody else's character kicked their character's ass.
Yeah, well,
nothing bothers an insecure person more than that. So you're open. Like, a lot of RPG players don't play one-on-one games, and if you play one-on-one games, you have to be okay with your inadequacies as a player being laid starkly bare.
With points,
you can't go, I just got unlucky all the time. Well, you can, but you're delusional if you do.
Blood Bowl
you still have to face the fact that I am worse than this person. I am not as good as this game. This person is better at this game than I am.
Never Blood Bowl players.
And I have to accept that I am worse than them.
Never ending.
And that's hard for some people.
Yeah, absolutely. What does Matt Coble have to say about PvP? Presumably there's another Kickstarter in it.
I don't think he's done a PvP thing. He has definitely extolled the virtues of solo play, where it's just the player and the GM. He definitely does think that is something people should try more.
I'm delighted he's got all the time in the world to do it, because you just...
I say he's done it, but he's the process of having a one-on-one session for all of the players in his campaign has taken most of a year. To be fair, it's been the COVID year, but schedules are not always so kind.
I'm gonna go back to something I said at the beginning and link it to my thing about the Gygaxian long table of players. In all the time Zauseed was running, upwards of a dozen people on a semi-regular. I don't think he ever once resorted to or felt the need for some way of systematizing certain aspects of how this coalition of idiots worked, which I feel is the misstep, the fundamental misstep in these projects, that there's certain things here that Koval has systematized and then, to compound the error, has pointed has sort of targeted to single players. Like the Strongholds book allows for every character in a party to have a stronghold. Are they on a stronghold estate? Is there a little? Are they terrace strongholds? How does this work?
Semi-D strongholds. You know,
there is a option rule in the book for have everyone's stronghold being tied together, but it's not as robust as the people who prefer the party of many approach to it's there, but it didn't get consideration that people assumed. They wanted, let's make the super fortress. I will build the laboratory. I will build the hangar full of dragons, etc. Like that didn't happen, and people seem to have wanted that. Although you can question whether they should, but
I think.
But are you saying that you reject the idea that mechanics is the solution to this? Like you can't put a thing in the game to help one style or another?
No, what I would say there is that there are very good examples of mechanics in games that do this well. I'll refer you to games like Conspiracy X, and this isn't one of them. From what I can see so far, he's working backwards from a narrative idea and systematizing in the wrong direction. There's definitely ways to do organizations in systems and fellowships in systems. You can look at Blades in the Dark for another good example. With the party sheets aren't unknown. The Third Ed Wolfrup did a party sheet mechanic as well.
Yes, it was great.
Yeah, it's been done. So the fact that he's done it and hasn't done it well just speaks to perhaps a lack of reading on the subject, which is understandable. He's prolific output. You don't have, as with so many people in games development, nearly never have any time to play other games to learn anything. So you see the same mistakes being made again and again. I feel like a lot of his background in computer games comes through a little too strongly here in the single player focus. Whereas if you're going to systematize things like Strongholds, it wants to be a party level or an organization level. But there's things to get right here that he doesn't appear to have landed on. Perhaps because there are deficiencies in the way he designs. We should probably hit conclusions at this point.
I know, I still want to argue this point.
I'm not going to change your mind, but, I mean, state the case, you know?
No, it's just can you make mechanics that suit people, between sessions, the DM and the player do some stuff on the side? Can you make mechanics that suit, each person in the group having their own take on things and their own weird project to sink money into? Or is it just so much easier to make a party mechanic that encourages the party to work together? Because, I guess by design, the fact that you have a character sheet means that you have, solo mechanics. But should there, one of the challenges to design for, we get together and do stuff together because we're a party, but also on the side we have our own things.
If you want effectively group play, individual flavor, but coming together a cohesive whole, you have to do roles effectively. So let's say you've got your kingdom, right? And you go, okay, what's in a fantasy army? You've got infantry, and we'll split those into ranged troops and melee troops, and you've got cavalry, and you've got monsters, and you've got war machines, and you've got wizards. that's what you need in a fantasy army. And you go, right, we're going to portion this one out. And the cleric or the wizard can do a structure that helps with recruiting wizards. Or makes a particular type of wizard. And gives you a particular kind of bonus for the wizard stuff. And the ranger can help out with range troops, or he can help out with scouting. And you get them to make choices that then come together and build a cohesive party. You zoom out the content, so now you're looking at, right, we're zooming out, and we're still playing a party game. It's just we're moving different pieces around and we're twiddling different knobs. But everyone's contributing, but they get their own flavour. That's how I do it. I'd say, right, your wizard can go down kind of an alchemical recovery route where you can help people recover from fights faster. You can go down a magical artillery route where you're all about bombarding the hell out of the opposite side. Or you can go down a research route where you're all about scrying and figure stuff out. And you can do one of those 3 routes, and each of them gives a different advantage to the game. And you'll get to make a choice there. While at the same time, you're the artificer. Okay, you can go down magical artillery, you can go down logistics and support, or you can go down equipping the troops with better armour. Away you go. Pick one of those. And if you both pick magical artillery, hey, your army's super powerful in the range phase, effectively. Yeah, we bombard the guys up close, but we're deficient in the recovery, we're deficient in the toughness of the melee troops. So that's how I do it. I go, what can we portion out? What little slices of the mechanic pie can we give to each kind of class or mini stronghold? And then away you go. Like you have the wizard's tower, and the wizard's like, right, well, I'll get us some fireball tossers, and we're going to blow these orcs off the battlefield. You know, and the artificer goes, yes, I'm going to build a bunch of cannons. And the ranger goes, you know what? We're doubling down a range combat. I'm going to get us a bunch of longbowmen. And then we'll try and shoot the orcs off the table before they get near us. And you can do that. That's how I
can almost imagine a way to glue together the two systems to do something like that. Because, again, some of those mechanics are in the first book for being solo, having your own stronghold, and raising your own troops. And then some of the mechanics are in the second book, which is all about have your organization, your role in the organization, and what buff that gives you, and what buffs you give to your organization's troops. So, yeah, it really does sound like you can't ignore either of these philosophies. You sort of have to consider both of them. Not to
Player
say
choice has to matter. Team play needs to be rewarded. Those are your two pillars for RPG play. Your choices that you make should matter, and team play should be important.
Yeah, and the way for that to be realised, I think, is that you develop systems that feed back. So if you've got an organisation, the things that are happening on the table feed back to the organisation, which feeds back to what's happening on the table. If it's a fellowship or a pirate gang or whatever, the downtime away from the table should be, sort of focused on doing whatever your role is in a way that meaningfully contributes when you come back together, so that you're bringing a bag of magic potions, or you're bringing some other benefit, new fighting technique, or a group maneuver that you can use during the game. What systems design? I think it depends on what you're looking for. It sounds like there's almost an off-table board game to be played. There's a downtime board game to be played around.
Some players will love that. Some players will hate that.
Yeah, if you've got the chops to design it, off you go. You probably get a Kickstarter out of it.
I think at the end, well, yes, get $1 million Kickstarter together. But yeah, the point at the end will be you have a scale from total cohesion to total band of ne'er-do-wells who barely know each other's names. And you're going to have to put your group on a scale between those two extremes. Both extremes have got interesting things to them and, give unique levels of play, but also reality is going to sort of smudge you both through convenience and from time. It's going to smudge you into the middle. So you should consider. I would certainly think it's worth considering both approaches, but only so that they can form the actual approach that works for you and your group.
I think there's probably a lot of Adventures League players listen to this going, what are you talking about? I never play with the same
we didn't
people.
even mention. Yeah, the Adventures League is actually possibly one of the best example of this. You know, I don't know who else is in the party this week, but I definitely want to go into that dungeon. Yeah. So I guess if these are the only people in the pub, I'm teaming up with them and we're going to have an adventure together. And I might never see these people again, or I might see them in a month. But yeah, that I wrote it down. I underlined it, but I didn't think.
Sorry, I've been reading your notes. It's fair to say that you're absolutely nail on the head there in that the realities of who you're playing with, when you're playing, and how you're playing have more bearing on this than what system you choose. Consider the realities and then figure out what system's going to work with that. Don't try and do it the other way around.
Right. Well, any final thoughts?
Lovely artwork. Love the font choice. That's what $2.1 million gets you.
Good on him making a bunch of money.
He's got like 8 people in, you know.
He has a monthly periodical as well, I believe, that is gorgeous layout work. And, you know, putting ideas out there that wouldn't necessarily be an entire supplement or would otherwise sort of end up ignored on DM's Guild. There's not the last we've heard of Matt Koval. He's certainly good at getting projects off the ground, and he has a following. I wouldn't be terribly convinced by these initial offerings as to his design chops. I think he's coming at it from the wrong end, but we shall see. I'd tell you what I'd like to see from him is probably a setting book.
People have been. He says he has no plan, but that just means it's not going to happen in the next couple of years because he have to make a monster book next. But you know, to return to the topic, figure out what level of play you want to play. Maybe thinking about this topic has sort of made me sort of long for both extremes, to be honest. It's just like I kind of want to do a whole bunch of high concept stuff where the party is glued together, their souls are bound to this purpose, and work through the wonderful opportunities of that. But also, I just think, what if I could get all of my friends in America and all of my friends in Limerick, and whenever people have matching schedules, they can come together in Discord and do some crazy old school game, and maybe they'll never meet each other twice. I think there's merit to considering these extremes.
Well, you're in luck. There's 2 good books to support either mode. One's called Strongholds and Followers, the other's called Kingdoms of Warfare. Right. Happy days. I think we have to draw a line under it at that point.
Absolutely.
Yes. All right. Well,
Scar, it falls to you.
Until we Matt Colville once again, this party's over.
You've been listening to The Adventure Party. We're a ragtag collective of desperate souls, striving for truth in a world of tabletop gone mad. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter. You can email us at party@theadventuringparty.net. Although, between you and me, the best place to track us down is Discord. Check the show notes for a link. This podcast released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license, which is like free, but with extra steps. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next week.